Report!
Officer report. Officer present in town for ma'am.
Ma'am, they find points out to that present or accounted for, ma'am.
Sir, I want officer present or accounted for, sir. Sir, email that present or sir. Sir, email what that present or sir. Sir, email for officer present or accounted for, sir. Ma'am, email report.
Sir, A-side for officer present or accounted for, sir.
Report.
Ma'am, A-side report. Officer present or accounted for, sir. Ma'am.
Ma'am, this part report, ma'am.
Group.
Squadron!
Fly. Pump rate.
Pump rate!
Pump rate. Rate.
Good morning. I'm Cadet Major Tasha Wheeler. On behalf of Dr. Pharrams, Robert E. Lee High School Principal, and Alabama 11, we welcome you to our annual September 11th flag ceremony. We would like to thank community leaders, first responders, family members, headquarters, Air Force JROTC personnel from Maxwell Air Force Base, and friends for coming out this morning. We would also like to thank some other special guests for joining us today. Mrs. Margaret Allen, Superintendent, Montgomery Public Schools Board of Education members, Mrs. Beverly Ross, Mr. Durden Dean, Mrs. Kim Pitts, the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Mrs. Gabrielle White, Director Career and Technical Education, MPS, Dr. Mickey Crenshaw, Education Specialist, Career and Technical Education, MPS, and Major Retired Barbara Marshall Coleman, former Lee High School, Air Force JROTC, Senior Aerospace Science Instructor. Today we are here to remember and honor those who lost their lives as a result of terrorist attacks on our great nation on September 11, 2001. The September 11 attacks were a series of suicide attacks upon the United States. On that morning, 4 commercial airliners were hijacked. 2 of the airliners crashed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. A 3rd airliner crashed into the Pentagon. The 4th plane crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. The death toll of the victims was 2,977. Let us always remember the lives lost and their loved ones on this horrific day our nation was attacked by terrorists. To begin our program, we will have a selection by the General Male Glee Club led by Mrs. Brenda Schufer, followed by Speaker Colonel Bobby Woods.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I'd abandon children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause that flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died that gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston, from New York to LA, where there's pride in every American heart, it's time to stand and say, and I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land.
Today we are honored to have as our guest speaker our new Air Force JROTC Director from Maxwell Air Force Base, Colonel Bobby Woods. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Colonel Woods.
Good day, Commander. Please bring the group to attention and put them at ease. Okay, good morning. Make sure you don't lock your knees, everyone. Only one passing out. Thank you to Dr. Lorenza Pharrams for this opportunity this morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to Ms. White, Mrs. Ross, Mr. Dean, Mr. Crenshaw, or Dr. Crenshaw, Ms. Allen, Colonel Douglas, Major Marshall Coleman, and all of our other distinguished guests this morning, teachers, students, family members, firefighters, and law enforcement, and members of Team Maxwell. 13 years ago, on a morning much like this, we were attacked without provocation by a group of 19 terrorists associated with the Islamic extremist group Al-Qaeda. They hijacked 4 of our airliners with our own citizens and carried out suicide attacks with the goal of killing as many American citizens, innocent American citizens, as possible. On that day, we saw the very worst that mankind was capable of. And we also saw the very best that mankind was capable of. And it's that contrast that I want to talk to you briefly about this morning. I want to talk this morning about choices. This morning, we pause to take some time to remember what happened that day. We remember the innocent lives that were taken from us. We remember the families who live without their loved ones even to this day and probably think about them every single day. We remember the victims. We remember the heroes of that day, September 11th, 2001, and we honor them. Some of you were perhaps too young to remember that day. If you're a senior this year, you were likely only 4 or 5 years old when it happened. I know your teachers and your parents and your grandparents remember that day very well, as I do. I clearly remember that morning. I had watched the news, the weather reports for the Northeast, and they had reported great weather that morning. I had just come from an assignment at McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey and was watching the weather, as I always did, to kind of see what my friends were going to be flying in the Northeast, what kind of weather they were going to have to fly with. We were in San Antonio at the time. I was on a new assignment. We were on our way to an appointment. My wife was expecting our second child. And as we drove to that appointment, a radio announcer broke in with a news flash that an aircraft had crashed into the World Trade Center in New York. It was just after 8:46 a.m. Eastern Time. And that was the time that American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston with 92 passengers on board was flown into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. We didn't know that at the time, but I told my wife that it seemed strange because the weather was good that day. And I don't know how someone would have accidentally flown an airplane into the World Trade Center with the weather being as good as it was. What seemed like only a few minutes later at 9:03 a.m., United Flight 175 with 65 passengers on board was deliberately flown into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Another announcement was made that the second airplane had flown into the second tower. We didn't know exactly at that time what kind of aircraft these were, but I remember looking at her and I told her, this is not an accident. We're under an attack. As we arrived at Wilford Hall Medical Center in San Antonio, we went inside the hospital and every person in the hospital was glued to every available TV watching what was going on. I remember the anger that I felt inside. I remember the helplessness that I felt inside as I sit there and I watched these events of that day unfold in front of my very eyes. At 9:37 a.m., hijackers on board Flight 77 crashed a plane into the western facade of the Pentagon, killing 59 people on board and 125 military and civilian personnel inside the building. At 9:56, the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapsed. At 10:10 a.m., Flight 93 that took off from Newark, New Jersey, crashed into a Pennsylvania field after the passengers decided to fight back in an attempt to regain control of that aircraft, knowing full well what was happening in New York and other places around the country. 40 passengers and crew die in that crash. The extremist hijackers were likely intending to fly that plane into a target in D.C. At 10:28 Eastern, the North Tower fell. As I look back on the images of that day, near Ground Zero, there are a few observations that I want to point out. We never forget the bad, because it always helps us be prepared for the future. But we choose to focus on the positive of that day, always being sensitive to those who lost friends, husbands, brides, sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, mothers and daddies, aunts and uncles that tragic day. Point number one, there I've got 4 of them, and I want you to listen to these if you can. That day we were united. We were all the same. I recall seeing the faces of the people fleeing that area, all races, all religions, all types, covered with the light gray dust of the destruction that surrounded them. We all looked the same that day. We all were the same that day. We were brothers and sisters. We were Americans. And we knew we had been attacked. And our response was being discussed within hours of those attacks. All of America was united, united in our grief, united in our purpose and righteous anger to find those who are accountable for these senseless and cowardly acts and deliver justice. And on May 2nd, 2011, justice was delivered in the middle of the night by a U.S. Navy SEAL team in a small town in Pakistan. They were courageous, as have been the troops that have served our nation in combat since those attacks, as have those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for freedom, like Master Gunnery Sergeant Stephen Bryson and many others. Number 2, that day provided many lessons on courage because of their choices. There are so many examples of courage that day. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what must be done even though you're afraid. Courage is when you don't allow that fear to keep you from action, from doing what is right. The passengers of Flight 93 who said to each other, "Are you ready? Let's roll," had the choice, and they chose courage. The firemen and policemen in New York and D.C., as well as the citizens who tried to help others, had a choice, and they chose to be courageous. Firefighters and policemen running into the World Trade Center trying to rescue people. Men and women going upstairs toward the flames to find co-workers. Military members and Department of Defense civilians going back into the Pentagon to save co-workers in distress. All pictures of courage. All of them made choices to do something to help. Remember their lessons. Remember what they chose to do that day. Number 3, never forget. Honor those who died and those who survive even now, and who live on without their loved ones every day. Never forget how much that day hurt us. Understand that the threat of Islamic extremism, which sees no problem with killing innocent people, has not gone away. Daily events in Syria and Iraq with murders of innocent people for refusing to change their faith are proof of poison in that type of hateful ideology. Reject it. The poison of hate which is spread through that type of ideology is in direct opposition to the principles of liberty, freedom that our nation was founded upon. Some choose death, destruction, hate, and fear. We should never forget and be ready to act and speak out against these and other hateful beliefs. It's important to understand that this threat is not going away, and we must continue to address it. Number 4, choose to make a positive difference. Choose to be a positive example with your friends, your family, members of your school. Choose to make good decisions. Look for opportunities to serve and help others. The need is great, and I ask each one of us, what will we do? What will we do? Choose to see and understand the effects from the seeds of hate. It brings forth a rich harvest of death, destruction, pain, hopelessness, and fear. See the results of hate, reject it. Don't allow it to take root in our hearts ever. Choose life, choose liberty, choose freedom and peace guaranteed by our great Constitution. In all that day, close to 3,000 people lost their lives in a cowardly and despicable attack on innocent people, our people. It was a day of grief, and it was a day of courage. We will not forget, we will remember, and we will prepare and be ready if anyone else tries to do something similar in the future. So my question to each of us is, what will we do? What will we choose? Will we choose to show others compassion, love, and kindness? Will we choose to see the opportunities around us in our community and in our school and stand up for what's right and show courage? What will we do to help a stranger? What will we do to make our schools, our city, our state, our nation a better place? What will we do to show courage to be true leaders? And it is in these choices done every day, day after day, that we really defeat that which the terrorists stood for. Last year, Colonel Douglas referred to a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King that is powerful, and I want to repeat it here today. Dr. King was quoted as saying, "Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are we doing for others?" That's what we're talking about today. Keeping the spirit of the 9/11 heroes alive by helping others, by choosing to make a positive difference in our world. So I conclude to you by asking, how will you choose to be? Each of us has a choice. Choose to make a positive difference by being courageous, by being accountable to each other and encouraging each other to be courageous. Don't be afraid to take a stand for what's right. We can all encourage each other by showing love and kindness. We can encourage each other by being an example. There are so many good examples from that terrible day. Let us remember and never forget. Never forget the sacrifices. Never forget their example. Let us each be moved to action so that we too choose to do what is honorable and what is good. Thank you for this great opportunity. God bless each and every one of you, and God bless our great nation.
Thank you very much for those motivational words. I am Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Jamaica Williams Petty, Commander of the AL-11 Kitty Hawk Air Society. At this time, we would like to make you an honorary member of the Kitty Hawk Air Society, and it is my pleasure to present you the Kitty Hawk certificate and pen. Right, left, 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 right,
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony. On behalf of Dr. Pharrams and Alabama 11, we thank all guests, parents, faculty, and staff for coming out to support our program. We'd like to thank our bugle player, Cadet Thornton, our choir director, Mrs. Shuford, Mr. White and his team, Officer Williams and his team, and our special guests from the local community in Maxwell Air Force Base. Have a great day.